Hello, Channel Automation podcast listeners. Welcome back to another deep dive into the techniques that convert leads. I'm your host, Casey Arias, and I'm joined here today by our local 5.9 and call center expert, Stephen White, and Vic Sun, the man himself. Welcome, everyone. So today, we talk a lot about different systems and how they play a role in lead conversion, but we want to narrow down the top players. So what are like the shining stars of business software? What do you want to have more than anything in terms of like dialers, CRMs, marketing software? Like, what is the best ones that you can have in your arsenal?
A little biased, I'd say, if I were to answer for dialer's sake, 5.9 is typically one of the best you can have. I've seen other ones work well, but 5.9, if you have a call center of up, I would say past 6 or 7 heads, you may consider 5.9, so you can multiply that. What would you say though, Vic?
I agree. I mean, there's really a lot of systems that you could add in would be, we integrate with. I think that the benefit of our system, obviously biased towards this, is that we ingest all the technology so that call center reps, contact centers, sales teams, marketing teams, recruiting teams don't have to have multiple apps that don't talk to each other. Everything is in one place. I think the misconception many times with our system, which I deal with when like we get over 100 referrals, I would say, every quarter, and people always, I thought it was just for text. I thought it was just really cool videos on text, and then we showed them a text, email, voice, social, chat platforms, web chat, and then NLP, which is natural language processing, AI, automation, workflows, and their minds blown. So I think that really, when you talk about how to grow your business, I think one of the things now that people should consider is, how do you clean up your technology so that you don't have multiple things going on? Because that could be useful to you, but let's face it, the one question that everybody's asking right now is, how difficult is it to hire and train staff, right? Because it's so much more competitive. It's harder to train call center reps. And then the more you add, the more stuff that you integrate that's not talking to each other, and you're having used several platforms, several solutions, just the harder it is to get that person to be efficient, let alone be effective. Dialers like 5.9, we've obviously got a partnership with them. We know 5.9 very, very well. It's a very complex system. I think 9 out of 10 times, I would say companies think of a 5.9 or a dialer as a solution to something, but they don't really understand that this solution creates even more problems, because they're just thinking about, I can make more phone calls. You can do that by just getting something to go internally and monitoring your people. When you use a dialer, you're doing it automatically, but more phone calls doesn't necessarily lead to more engagement or better conversion.
So when you're saying it can create more problems, having a more robust system, what do you mean by that? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, when you're creating a system, your tech stack, and you're basically looking at it from a silo perspective, text messaging for leads, and then when it becomes a sale, I'm now going to get reviews and I'm going to use something else. You're creating. You don't really have a strategy at that point. What you have is a plan. Okay, a strategy is optimizing for results, taking into account things that you can control and the things that you cannot control. Most people just have a plan, and the plan's difference between a strategy is you're optimizing for resources or for these results, but you're only really considering the things that you can control, right? Not the things that you can't control. And most people will say, I can control my call center converting on these with this platform, and I can control for the production team using another platform. And then you can't control like how those two divisions, because you're only managing this division. So now you're just like, okay, I'm going to handle this and I don't care about that piece, when those two pieces actually work together. It's the same customer, it's the same organization. And in some cases you have multiple phone numbers, multiple emails going out, different processes, and I think it creates for a lot of inefficiency. So the spider web, is common in any organization when they're kind of figuring out how to put this together. I think what's missing is creating simplicity. Simplicity is hard to achieve. It's elegant, it's hard to achieve, it's difficult. But I think this is where, instead of thinking about apps to add, you should think about, how do I remove stuff? No more adding, let's subtract. Let's streamline this so that everybody's using the same system and it's talking to each other.
Yeah, I think that's a very good assessment. So Stephen, I know that you deal a lot with making systems communicate with each other when it comes to systems that are automatically established, such as like dialer to CRM to channel automation. What is some easy fixes for people who are trying to get sort of that trifecta connected together, that you're like, hey, if you do this in the front, you can avoid problems later on?
I think for a lot of folks that are setting up a new system, they tend to focus on launch, and they tend to focus on moving forward. What I've noticed when we are setting up and planning, we do our best to plan things not plan them to death, but plan them in a way that makes sense. When people don't take the time to really plan out what they're using and why it's important, how it's going to interact with the things around them, then what I've noticed is at times you may end up with an undesirable outcome, right? Because if you don't take the time to plan things out from the start, and you just go through like, I have a deadline, like there's this launch, it's going to happen right now. There could be repercussions where the things that are being deployed could potentially not have the full ability of what you had intended. For instance, I had a back maybe about a year ago, someone said, we're going to launch Salesforce. It's going to be done this day and this time. And the team was like, all right, we're going to try to do it within this time period. By the end of that time period, it wasn't like, are we done? Should we launch? It was, I've reached the deadline. Now it is launch time. And at the end of that, they had ended up losing just tons of business because they had decided to, I can't give you an exact dollar amount, but just because they had decided to launch without fully fleshing out what the plan was. In that instance, they had gone against their team's advice and the advice of the people that are working with them to just focus on this launch date. So it's not a simple fix. In fact, it takes a little bit of time, but the planning part and getting it done the right way the first time makes a lot of sense, especially for a smoother, more effective launch for a lot of the platforms we've integrated with.
Can I interject and go and say, look, if there are 5 things, if that a call center might need, or a team, a marketing team or a sales team or a recruiting team, a division for marketing or sales, which is, very focused, obviously, you'd want a system where you don't have as many of these things. And if you do have many of these things, are talking to each other. So the first one is, absolutely, you should always have a CRM or an ERP, the brain. This is the repository. So let's start off with that. The one thing you should have is a CRM. And we have partnerships with companies like, let's say, Lead Perfection in home services, right? And Salesforce, if it was other industries, where you could go and say, I need a brain. This is a repository for all the data, all my customers, all my prospects, all my cold lists, really just where you could go in and say, where are my leads? What's happening to them? This is the brain, right? This is where it sort of starts off with, and it's starting to connect with everything else. Then number 2 is you'd want some form of omnichannel communications, like channel automation, right? Where some people will go, well, I do have text and email, and I didn't use another one for social, and I know one for reviews, and I have another bot for chat, IVR, and I have a chat bot. Our system has all of that. So if you want to make that number 2, which is all your communications in one place. Some CRMs will have it. So for example, Lead Perfection does have the ability to send texts and emails, but it's quite limited, right? And there's no automation there. It's really just one-to-one messaging. There could be some automation, but it's very, very surface oriented because they're just not built that way. And there are CRMs like Salesforce, but every time you add something to Omnichannel, you're going to add pieces there, and you have to program that. So the second piece is you've got to have an Omnichannel solution, because nowadays it's very short-sighted for you to just basically say, oh, all our clients just need a phone call. Well, what about the people who don't want phone calls? Well, okay, we have text. Well, what about the people who don't like text? Okay, we'll email them. What about, so you know what I mean? It keeps adding. So number 2 is communications. Okay, that should be your second priority. You have the brain, you have all the leads, you have all these customers. How do you talk to them? How do you reach out to them? That's your second piece of technology. The third piece is business intelligence visualizer. Something like a Power BI, Tableau. We have analytics within our system, that visualizes this. When I mean business intelligence visualizer, I don't mean reports, because you typically have that already. You'll have that in your CRM, these push reports. You'll probably have them on your email app or your text app. If it's with us, it's integrated within analytics throughout every channel. But a business intelligence visualizer is key, because you now want to make this informed, intelligent decisions based on relational statistics or analytics. What that means is that most companies will look at a report like a sales report or a marketing report, and they say, well, I got this many leads and I converted on these leads through sales. That's not enough nowadays. You need to understand why. Okay? Why did I only convert 10% on my Queen Street leads or Modernized leads or Angie leads or leads.io leads? Well, it's because they came in at this time of the day. It's because these agents handled them. It's because our response rates is 1 minute versus 6 minutes on a Thursday, 1 minute on a Monday. A business intelligence visualizers pulls from your CRM, from your Omnichannel, or from databases. It can even pull from your ads, like if you run a Facebook ad. So now all of this data, so we talked about CRM being the repository, your business intelligence platform or app or your visualizer now pulls from SQL databases, from lead sources, from ads, and now it goes in there, and then now you have the ability to create relational trend lines and patterns and graphs that tell you, well, on Mondays, this is the best time where we get the most number of leads, and we do very poorly on Wednesdays for this type of product because we only get this amount, and these people are the ones converting on it. That allows for you now to go and make purchasing decisions on leads, make adjustments, and then calibrating your communications, which is a lot of people don't have business intelligence visualizers, and then they go and wonder, how come I'm only converting 10% on this lead source, and what happens to the 90%? And they say, oh, we keep calling it. With a business intelligence visualizer for dialers, for example, you can now predict and say, it doesn't even matter if we speed to lead or speed to call these ones. From this lead source, we get them on day 3, or the majority of them only pick up the phone after X amount of touch points, and it's usually this touch point, it's usually this time of the day, it's usually this Teams. So now I don't even need to go and call them right away. I need to be smarter and maybe text them first, tell them I'm calling, email them a follow-up, and then go, we're going to be calling you now, this day and time. Then the call actually gets delivered. So I can't think about other things at this point. I'm sure there's other apps. I said I was trying to get to 5, but those are the 3. If you have those 3, I think you should be okay.
You know what? I'm not going to penalize you from only having 3 out of 5. I mean, you set the standard for yourself and shoot for the stars if you hit the moon. That's still pretty darn good, Vic. All right.
You're very generous.
We talked about sort of like the best kind of system setup already. That was one of the things that I was going to kind of pick your brain about a little bit. But like, we also have people that when they hear about omnichannel marketing, they're like, well, can I have it to the point of where everything is automated, where I don't have to hire a marketing department, I don't have to hire call center people? Can we make it so that way my business runs 100% on just pure automated messaging? Is that possible?
No, well, yeah. I mean, I think you can go through and get it to a point where it's close, but once you have the business intelligence kind of feeding you information, it wouldn't make sense to keep it the same. You'd want to keep calibrating and adjusting and planning and making it work better for you. If you were just to say, I don't think it can ever be a set and forget, because things are like, the landscape is changing. For instance, like our clients have been receiving notices to say, you need to be calling this amount of times in a day. Maybe you need to update your the opt-in language for a specific region or specific people. There's so many factors that can continually update and change. It's like with a car, you have to keep changing the oil and updating it. You just have to keep maintenance up on your messaging.
I think that let's address the elephant in the room. I think we're very similar to Salesforce, where we're not like out of the box solution, at least for our company. And there's pros and cons to that, right? I think the Casey's question is very insightful here. I think lots of people, when you're talking about calibration and those sort of things, there's this very painful element that is required when you're trying to improve on something. And I think it's so simple. And if you're listening out there, like, this is something that you should consider. In order to improve on something, something must be not perfect. Something must be failing. Something must be not going right. Because if it was perfect, or if it's going the way that it should, how can you perfect it? How can you improve on it? And this is the painful piece that lots of people think. I think a lot of people are liars. That's probably a nice little short right there. Draw people and pick clickbait. No, people are liars when it comes to improvement.
You're talking about system automation. You're like, actually, all of you are liars. You know what? I'm going to take a turn here.
It's because when people say, I want improvement, I'm all about calibrating and improving. And then you look into how they do things, and in the first month that they fail on something, they get pissed off. They look at that as like, oh man, it's over, it's done. 2 months. And you go and think, you've been having this problem for 2 years, 3 years, 15 years, like for many companies have been around for that long. And to think that you're going to solve it within 1 month, 2 months, you're not really serious about improvement. You know what I mean? Like, I go and use this example for Toyota. Like, if you look at Toyota, the way they build cars, like the Tundra, the Matrix, lots of their cars, the Corolla. The Tundra, for example, which is one of their best-selling models, it takes them a decade to update the design, because when they take the 10-year period to really perfect that thing, and then once they start selling it, it's like, yeah, there's different years, different slight adjustments to it, but it's really the same car or the truck. And you go and look at the things, it's like, from 2012 to 2020, maybe that was more of like a 10-year period, maybe 8-year period. That truck was the same, essentially. Maybe 1 or 2 features were changed, and then now in 2021 or 2022, they developed a new one, and it's completely different. But they take that time to go and say, look, this is that car that's going to last for another 10 years, 15 years, whatever. They build those things, and then when they release a new version, they really take the time because they're perfecting it. It's the same thing with communications, with leads. To believe that everything should be done right, correctly within your first 6 months, I think a lot of people they're just liars, or they're just lying to themselves, or they're just not really serious about improvement. Because if you've been around for more than a year, and every year you're having these issues, you really have to go and say, well, what's really my threshold for improvement? I'm going to go and keep doing this. It's going to continue to work. And that's what I'm focused on, not goals, but improvements. And the one thing that I think people should know about that is, how do you know that you're Kaizen driven, constant improvement, continuous improvement? It's how you react when failure happens. Are you the person that goes, now I'm going to change this part of the script, or I learned that this doesn't work, and now I'm going to go and change it and switch it up because now I can improve on it? Or when you first see the failure, are you like demoralized, upset, angry, give up, do something else? And I think that piece right there is important, because we can talk about how to do these things, but if you've got somebody with a bad attitude that comes, with how to improve systems, you're never really going to be able to improve it.
On the same vein as that, I do think, and I'm obviously not going to name any names, but we have had the experience before where when we start to work with more members of the team, if one person out of every single company, let's say that we're talking like 7 people or more per company, if one out of those 7 people are not bought in to having an improved system or learning new technologies, it really puts a damper on progress. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit there. It could drag the whole run down.
I think when you go and start looking at companies that keep on just searching for the next platform, and they're like, well, I'll give this 2-3 months and see if it works. That's a behavior that's personal. I don't think that's a behavior that's business. Like, that's who you are. You kind of just like, oh, let's give it 2-3 months and if you really want to make something work and then you start it, like, you want to be committed to that until you've said, I absolutely do not ever see improvement. But again, part of the issue there is that in order to see improvement, you're going to see failures, right? Failure rates are more telling, and you learn more from failures than you do successes. It's just the one thing that we're all part of. And with regards to technology, kind of trying to keep looking for the next best thing, especially when you have something that you're seeing improvement and you're like, well, maybe there's something else. I think that's just because you can't make that thing work, right? Or that's how you think about solving problems, is I need somebody else to solve this, some technology to be able to solve this. It's not really me, which is kind of undermining. If you're a manager, if you're a VP, or if you're a CEO, and that's your way of addressing an issue and not fixing it or calibrating it, then that's potentially the way we deal with things all the time. And we see this in call center environments where they'll hire person right off the gate, just started working there. And then first 30 days, they're like expecting this person to be like converting. This person's so brand new, and you know what I mean? And then they go, after about a month, you need to fire them. This high turnover, just find somebody else. Like, you need to give this person some time to digest these things, you know what I mean? And improve. But I think that's less of a technology problem, more of an attitude, personality, or some sort of managerial phenotype that they have.
When we're talking about dialers, if we're getting back into like kind of the system conversation, because I know we can go on for days about like what's the right person to hire for a call center. In fact, we actually talked about that in another podcast. I think that the thing that people are missing out on a little bit, and this is why developers always have a job in pretty much every single company, is how do you get your dialer to talk to your marketing or to talk to your CRM? And I'm not saying literally like, oh, you use this kind of a call to action or whatever. And obviously I'm not a developer, so I'm sorry I'm using like the wrong terms here. But how do you get your concrete systems to play nice with your marketing systems? Because in my mind, it seems like there's two different worlds. So to combine those worlds together, it almost seems like you'd have to do something special. Am I right? Or say I'm on the right track?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I think that that comes down to what we were mentioning before with the systems that are good with visualizing. So like if you put that information into a visualizer, then all of a sudden you have access to all of the insight that could be gleaned from the data that you're gathering. Like, yes, the caller is calling, the information is there in the dialer, But in order to get it out in a meaningful way, you would have to make it so that, no, I can tell you this, like, as maybe 3 out of 10 companies we talk to are effectively using their current reports. Even maybe 1 out of 10 has a visualizer. So I'd say planning and like visualization of what kind of processes are happening and how those are affecting the call center and overall the I guess the bottom line of like the ROI on some of these lead sources. It's there's not a lot of vision there. It's kind of all insightful. It's all feeling based. Like, well, it feels like this is the case, or it feels like this isn't quite working the way I want it to. There's never any like hard evidence, and no one's pointing to a report or a number to tell us that there's like a specific detail that that is the evidence.
But don't you think that their evidence, because we get this all the time when we speak to people who don't have the business intelligence being visualized or analyzed, they don't do regression analysis. And I know it's tough because sometimes they don't have people in there who know how to do those things. But how do you, maybe you can't explain this. Maybe it's just for us, it's at this point, it's allegorical and how we go through this. But what do you think goes through this process within the companies where they go, no, we do have evidence, because when let's say we speed delete every lead source, like as soon as we get it, we're calling it within 1 second, and we go, well, you don't connect with everybody within 1 second, and you're buying a lead that 5 other people are, and they go, well, because we do get appointments in sales. So how would you give? I guess we can practice this, or we could tell people who's listening and watching us, how do we overcome that when we say, yep, those are the results, but they're not necessarily you using the intelligence to test and calibrate, so that maybe you'd go, what are the results if you don't call them right away? Maybe these leads need to be texted and not called and emailed first. But let's go and maybe let the audience know how that might be in real life.
Isn't that a type of fallacy where you continuously tell yourself that something is working because you haven't tried anything else?
Or if you have results, you have results from it, right? You go and say, well, if I just speed delete, I'm setting 10% of my Quinn Street Modernized, Angie leads, whatever. And I think maybe it's a fear. I think I sense 2 things, emotions, like fear of like, if I don't speed delete everybody, maybe I'll go down to 8%. Like I'll take the 10, even though that 90% of the time it sucks, which to me is like, don't you see the opportunity is bigger, 90 versus 10? But I think sometimes that fear grips them and say, doing that. And then the other piece of it is that, I guess maybe it's also fear, but I don't have the guts to try to get lucky and experiment or test.
Okay, but it's not fear from the individual necessarily. It's fear from upper management, because, I don't think of an individual who is invested in making a better lead strategy overall. I don't think that they're going to be scared from going from 10% to 8%. But if upper management sees they're going from 10% to 8%, they're going to say, whatever you're doing right now, you need to stop and do what you were doing before.
I'll give you a very good example of being unintuitive and doing what is not common, and it pays off. Okay. Look at Steven, they're posting those emojis. So everybody knows that Costco is the most popular example of this. You go to Costco, they sell these hot dogs and these drinks for like pennies. Not really a penny, maybe $1, something like that. Like you can get a drink and a hot dog for $1 or $2, something like this. We know that they don't make money on this. That's their loss leader. They continue to do it. Same thing with Sam's Club, for example. They sell their rotisserie chicken for like less than $5. They're not making money out of it. They're basically continuing to offer it. So you think about that. It's so intuitive. Why would you take a loss on the hot dogs and the drinks or the pizza or the rotisserie chicken? And then you go and look at it. I mean, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and you're making me hungry. Like, those are like my go-tos from like Costco and Sam's Club. I'm like, it's like warm time right now.
Yeah, but I mean, think about this, right? They do that because it is unintuitive. Like, why would you lose money? And in this case, sometimes you'd lose millions of dollars because they're large companies and they have multiple branches across the world. You know, Costco has branches all over the world, right? Sam's Club is probably local here, but they lose money on those things.
But they charge for membership.
Right. But it's really because they realized, well, when they come here, yeah, maybe there's many people who just buy the chicken. But I go there for rotisserie chicken for my dogs and for myself for protein, right? I don't ever just go there. Not once do I ever just go there like, I'm just going to get the rotisserie chicken or the pizza or the hot dog. I'm going to go there. I'm picking up other stuff. You know what I mean? Dog food, dishwash soap. I don't know about you, but do you guys just go there sometimes? I mean, maybe sometimes, but the majority of the time that you go there, do you just buy the cheap stuff?
Don't test me, because I, in college, did trek to Costco just to get the pizza or just to get the Chicken Joy or just to get the whatever. Not Chicken Joy, chicken, you know what it's called. Anyways, if you know, you know. But yeah, to get the cheap stuff, yeah, I would go there. But only because it was outside. See, Sam's Club did it so that now it's inside. You actually need a membership to get in to get the cheap hot dog.
But to your point, though, Vic, I definitely, every time I've gone to pick something up, because, you know, I'm usually picking stuff up for the whole family, I'm getting 3 pizzas. They say it takes 30 minutes for those to get ready. In those 30 minutes, I'm not going to stand there and stare at the pizza. I'm going to go shopping.
Yeah, but Steven, I want to clarify. Steven, you went there just for the pizza, but have you ever gone to Sam's Club or Costco to buy anything else?
Oh yeah,
yeah, because you're not going to spend membership on just that's the whole thing, and I think it's really sad because billion-dollar organizations are teaching us what it means to really understand how humans think and how consumers, you know, how you can draw on consumers. And I think for at least the past 2 years, I've just been so jaded about this speed to lead situation, which every business seems to be so obsessed about. But then you look at that, and really the only speed that's happening is you're making a phone call and other people are doing the same thing. But you look at that and you go, how effective really is that? Are you? It's a lie. It's one of those lies again. We should have a theme like lies that people tell themselves, you know, in marketing and sales. And that's one of them. It's like, okay, you speed to lead everything. You have one strategy for everything, which happens to be the same strategy that your competitors are doing. So how are you really standing out? And I think maybe it's fear. Maybe Casey, you're right, which is it's not fear, but it's like, I don't even have the authority to do experiments and tests. Because the minute I do it, they cut off my legs and they'll go like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make us lose business? And I think that's the part right there. Like, if you're never going to get lucky if you don't test an experiment. That's just the reality of things, right? You cannot get lucky. You cannot find out something you don't know if you're only going to do what you know.
I think that is an excellent place to end it. So that's going to be it for us today. Whether you loved or hate what we had to talk about today, we want to hear from you. Comment or shoot us an email at hello@channelautomation.com. Also, please consider subscribing to this podcast and also getting free marketing tips from the call center and for marketing in general. As always, we want you to keep your conversion high. And if you are a client of us, we want to hear your questions that we can answer live for you. So that way other people who are asking the same questions, maybe they can get their question answered too. So, talk to you later.